We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror.
Mostly.
I'm Steve.
And I am Sean.
And we're back.
What's up, guys?
We're back with another episode. Mostly Horror, the deadliest podcast ever made.
Yep.
We have a great episode today. Two great guests, the co-directors and co-writers of Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. Got David Amito and Michael Laicini joining us. We have quite a long conversation with them, a really enjoyable conversation about Antrum, which those of you who don't know, we mentioned this during the interview, but this is one, as with almost everything we do, you're going to want to go watch Antrum before listening to this interview.
Hit pause.
We really kind of break the fourth wall from the get-go in this interview. So you're going to want to go check that out. You can watch it on Prime. It has commercials. If you can find a way to watch it without commercials, that's probably best.
It's also on Screenbox.
It's on Screenbox. Okay.
Yes. Yep,
so you can watch it on Screenbox. But you know, without giving too much away, this is a cursed film. You know, it's a documentary about a cursed film, and then it actually contains the cursed film in it. This really popped off during COVID online, and that's when we saw it. So I won't say too much else about it, but loved talking to Michael and David, and
I'm challenging every listener to watch it. It is cursed. It is supposed to kill you.
Yeah.
I have now survived 3 viewings.
Crazy.
Can you make it through 3 viewings without being
Chelsea? Can you put the "Could it be you" bite from I Think You Should Leave?
Could it be you?
We're just gonna have an entire full episode of I Think You Should Leave based on all the quotes that we put in.
That's fine. Let's get him on.
I would love. Tim doesn't like doing interviews, but I would love to get Tim. We should get Sam. Sam.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I would love.
I mean, I wonder.
Just talk.
We should email Josh. And anyways,
maybe
there's some things. Some things that you probably already know.
I'm sure you already knew that.
You only tell me stuff I already know.
You already know what I'm going to tell you.
Just some quick hitters, some hick quitters.
Oh God.
There's a convention going on called GamesCon. You know about GamesCon, Sean?
I do not. Well, wait. Is that? I actually do. Is that happening in like Oregon?
I don't.
Is that happening? I think it's happening in like Washington.
Let's look where
area.
GamesCon is.
GamesCon
is currently happening in
what?
Germany.
Oh, wrong thing.
It's in.
All right, so then wait.
It's in Cologne, Cologne, Germany.
So it smells real good over there.
Big game convention happening over yonder in Europa. Some interesting news coming out of GamesCon though. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which we know they're making a video game. They just dropped a trailer. It's like a good gameplay trailer. It has some locations, it has some weapons usage, and they actually just announced that their Ilphonic is the name of the company that did Friday the 13th the game and Predator Hunting Ground. They're taking over publishing duties. So this was the first trailer with them like attached on it. Obviously Friday the 13th, the game, I think we talked about this the last time, the servers all went down. I incorrectly thought that was Gun Entertainment. It was not. It's Ilphonic. But that was a conscious choice for them to do. So I'm curious how long Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, happens, like how long it exists for. But it is similar to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the game, Friday the 13th, the game, in which it's a 3v7 asymmetrical multiplayer horror game, as opposed to like a 1v5
round focused.
Exactly.
Like serial killer video game versions of tag. That's not to dismiss it, but to put it in perspective. And there's some puzzle aspects and things like that. I'm in, man. I think that Killer Clowns is probably the most, like, I'm excited about the Texas Chainsaw version, but Killer Clowns it feels like there's more opportunity to get wacky there.
It's we. I haven't seen Killer Clowns, and I've seen it once, and
Did you
I
see it at
just
Horror Movie Night years ago
probably I
in
don't
Cam's
remember
backyard?
enough about it.
Okay.
But I mean, it's worth a revisiting. I wonder if we could get the
Yeah.
Chiodos brothers on. That would be the wildest thing in the whole world.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
I'm gonna, guys. You're listening to us, but I'm very much so pausing the recording of this podcast to write down on whatever piece of paper is around here. Chiodos bros. All right, magic. You guys heard it here first. If you see that we have the Chiodos brothers, the directors of this film, on a later episode, this is where it all started. But anyways, that is coming out, and the trailer just came out at Gamescom. It's really cool. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. Another fun thing that was announced at Gamescom that you are going to be very excited about. Very excited
I am?
about. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
What?
If there was a video game that had 2 iterations and they announced that there was a third one coming out, do you know what one it would be that you would be excited for?
2 iterations.
Yeah. They had a first one and they had a sequel, and they just announced the third one. Do you know what it is?
Oh, is it Last of Us?
No. You would have you would have known. You would
feel
have
like,
known if The Last of Us.
All right, so a
sounds-
game where there's 2 of them,
Yep.
and they're is it another God of War?
No, man. Little Nightmares
fuck?
3.
Oh, let's go! Yo, I saw them announce. Hold up. I saw them announce some soundtrack stuff recently. The Sounds of Nightmares or whatever. And it's probably like, I didn't look through everything once I realized it was a soundtrack. Because the point of this, what I'm saying here, is that I was like, oh shit, are we getting a third Little Nightmares? And that happened like either yesterday or the day before. So it's really funny that I missed this. Oh, fuck yeah. I still haven't played 2, though, which is so shit.
Oh, I thought you did.
I just haven't had... No, I have it. I bought it. I have it. I was going to play it right after we talked to Dave, but I just have not had a chance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, this
We'll be
is
doing it soon.
gonna come out in 2024.
Let's go.
Xbox One, Xbox Series One, Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, all the things.
Cool. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it looks very fun. The one thing that's cool is you can do like a couch co-op gameplay of this, or you can play. It's like a 2-person game, so you can play either as one character and like an AI controlled, computer controlled,
sure,
or you can do like a couch campaign, which is pretty fun. So
they're
the characters' names are Low and Alone.
Okay, so names. 6 isn't a part of it. I don't know what happens in 2. Very interesting. Damn it! Oh, I want to play. I'm not going to have the time for a
7,
minute.
8, 9, man.
Shit. Yeah, dude, it's going to be a second before I have a chance to play, but maybe once we're deep enough into October, I might have a second. We just got to figure out all this moving stuff, but
yeah. All
right, hell yeah.
Next thing on the list to talk about, let's keep it video game related. I'm going to jump back to this other thing. This is definitely mostly, and I don't think you've played these games, but it was finally announced that the Fallout television series was coming out in 2024.
I haven't played any of them, but I know that like Cam loves them. I mean, everybody loves them. But I did see that they're doing a show, so that's interesting. I'm down. I wonder if people are down.
Yeah, I mean, it should be cool. Like it's for those who don't know, I mean, Kyle MacLachlan from Twin Peaks is in this. Ella Purnell, who's from Yellow Jackets. Walton Goggins, who's amazing and from The Hateful Eight. And
Walton Goggins is such a name. That's a name.
Walton Goggins is a great character actor. But yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, when like Amazon does their TV series, they like put a lot of money behind them, for better or for worse.
Sure.
I liked the Lord of the Rings series. I know people weren't a fan of that. And their adaptations are always kind of interesting. So I'm curious where this goes. I mean, we're in a world now where video games, after the recent successes of like Mario and stuff like that, I feel like people aren't as afraid to start adapting video games. They were doing it anyways, but I feel like we're just going to keep seeing it more and more and more. And
we're going to see more of a boom of it for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be like low lift attempts. Like Twisted Metal probably was.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'll watch it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Jumanji it's not a video game adaptation, but it's okay, I guess it's not. It wasn't a game first. Never mind. That's a completely dumb statement. It was a book first about a game. But either way, the point is we've been adapting shit for a minute.
Yeah.
Silent Hill, Resident Evils.
Yeah.
Those
It's
are
happened
the
more
earliest ones I can think of.
in the horror space probably. But like realistically,
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
before, I mean, like even Mario's a bad example. Like Last of Us is like the first good example of like a video game successfully being adapted and being like
Silent Hill. But in terms of like being super popular, being
Yeah.
popular, we just disagree. Silent Hill is a really great movie. I don't care.
It's fine,
but
it's
Last
not.
of Us-
I don't think people would be like, "That's a success." I don't think the overarching thought or like opinion would be that's a good video game adaptation.
Okay. Last of Us is really good, so I'm gonna give you that,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna leave that there.
That's fine.
But yeah, no, I think that I mean the little bits that I know of Fallout, it sounds like something that could totally be done, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, I think it'll be really cool. We'll see what happens. Next on the list, just a fun little thing for folks that are looking for something to do in September. 2 John Carpenter films are celebrating anniversaries this year, with 40 years for Christine and 35 for They Live. Both of those are being brought back to theaters. They Live is going to come out in theaters September 3rd and September 6th, and Christine will be in theaters the 10th and the 13th. So I figured I'd mention those. I've been a big fan of just like repertory theater and like seeing things that I never saw. I mean, like I recently saw Thoroughbreds and Memories of Murder, and Sydney and I have tickets to go see Lady Bird on Sunday, which like we didn't see in theaters. So
did you see that? Sorry, this just makes me think of it. But did you see that? So they recently did another run of Coraline in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that it like? And well, the last thing that they did, it made like it made just a bit under what Barbie and like Oppenheimer made or something like that. It was like the third, like those are the only 2 movies that had made more than it this year or something. One second, let me read.
Not this year. Maybe this past weekend, like the 4th Barbie and Oppenheimer weekend. Coraline was like underneath that. That's 100% what it was. Like what it was.
Okay. Its theatrical re-release made $5 million in 2 days.
Yeah, and I mean, so that was probably like, I don't know, that's like good enough for 7th in the box office. The Meg made 6 mil, Strays made 8, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles made 8. Leica knows that they're a band that like this is not my overarching opinion about Leica.
Mm-hmm.
It is probably a huge investment to make the films that they make.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure that if they can go, let's just play the hits every July and put out Paranorman for a weekend and Coraline for a weekend, that they'll make millions of bucks on it. You know what I mean? And like, that's, they're not seeing all of it, but it's a great thing. And also they put it out this weekend or this past weekend, but, on Sunday, it's like National Cinema Day or whatever. So you can get tickets for $4 to most movies, which we're seeing Lady Bird, but Coraline is one of the movies you can see at a lot of theaters still.
If they, really quick, thoughts on Leica, if they just committed to like essentially like kids horror animation, just like spooky, high fantasy, creepy tales, I bet that they would knock it out of the park every time. It was when, Kubo's still beautiful, and Missing Link is still really cool looking, but I'm sure that the performance of those 2 movies in comparison to Coraline and
Kubo's gotta be better than Box Trolls.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay, fine. Even Box Trolls I wasn't thinking about Box Trolls, but my point is that Coraline, I'm sure, is their highest like performing film that they've done by far. And then Paranorman would probably be second. Those are the 2 you hear people talk about.
Was Corpse Bride Corpse Bride wasn't.
So
Leica.
no, it's complicated. It's complicated. Yes, it was, but it was before Leica was like Leica. But it is this weird thing.
No, it was their. It was the production company.
Yeah, but it was before. Like, I think that was before. Like they. It's just like a little name that's put in like the credits that you see like at the beginning, as opposed to it being like a big like it's before Leica was really established. I think that was like their first thing that they did, and it was when Henry Selick was like building it all up. You can tell like visually it's obviously very different. And
so we're gonna go worldwide box office. Number 1, Coraline. Number 2, Box Trolls.
What?
Number 3, Paranorman. Number 4, Kubo. Number 5, by a far margin, Missing Link.
Yeah. Missing Link just didn't feel the same as a lot of the other ones do. I think they just need to keep leaning spooky whatever, kids facing spooky stuff, and they'll goldmine every time. And it won't be just like cookie cutter bullshit. Like there's so many things you can do with that over and over. Like, I guess it doesn't have to be little kids facing shit. You get what I'm saying. If they were just like weird, the horror for kids studio, I bet they'd make so much money.
Yeah, you're probably gonna. I don't know. I don't want to
I just don't want to see them get bought by fucking Disney or whatever, or some company.
They should get bought by like Apple or something, where they like will probably still allow them to do their own stuff.
Maybe.
Wow.
Come out with a movie about like
Fathom Events is like they're the company or whatever that puts out these old movies and like AMC and stuff. Yeah, when it returned from August 14th through 15th and 15th, it grossed a combined $5 million, and that was third behind Barbie and Oppenheimer on those days. And the CEO of Fathom Events says, as of now, Coraline is Fathom's biggest classic movie of all time. Wow. So like out of all the films that they bring back, it says this film carries such a large fan following year after year, and they certainly came out in force this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what else they need to do?
Yeah.
They need to just team up with Neil again and do another Neil-esque story. Imagine Leica's take on Ocean, or even something like Fortunately the Milk. Like, if they just brought Neil more into the picture, listen.
Yeah. I would be interested. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Anyways, one final thing that people may already know. Sean, what's bigger than 84? 85. VHS 85. The teaser trailer finally came out for it.
Yeah, dude.
This, it's always intriguing to see what's happening with these. I'm not going to say that I love everyone, but I think there's always fun things and fun shorts that I like in every one of these. We have David Bruckner is coming back. He's been producing these ever since he did the first one. He's going to be doing a short in this one. Scott Derrickson, who recently did The Black Phone, is going to be doing one of these instances. We got Gigi Salguero, who we've talked to on our show before.
About Bingo Hell.
We have Natasha Kermani, who did an indie film called Imitation Girl and another one called Lucky. So that's interesting. I don't know much about Natasha. And then we also have Mike P. Nelson, who did, I believe, the most recent Wrong Turn, which I actually heard pretty good things about, despite it not being a Wrong Turn movie. I've heard that it is very, very much not a Wrong Turn movie, but very much a good movie.
Sure. Cam told me he hated it.
Really?
I never got around to seeing it. Yeah. Admittedly, I'm not like, I've seen parts of Wrong Turn 3 on the Sci-Fi Channel forever ago.
Yeah.
I've never given it like the fair chance that I should, but never went running to the series. But yeah. So I don't know. Before I would watch that, I would need to see. I'm going to watch the originals, and then maybe I'll watch the new one, and go from there.
I have seen Lucky, which is one of Natasha Kermani's films. It was the one on Shudder, where the woman's a self-help author and she keeps like finding herself with like a mysterious man, like seeing like a mysterious man whose like face is kind of covered. Did you ever see that?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I now recognize it. Maybe if you see the poster for it, you'll recognize it.
Sure.
Anywho, excited for VHS 85. It's going to be premiering at Fantastic Fest, which I'm jealous and wish that I was attending, but nevertheless, we persist.
Hell yeah. I mean, dude, 94 was so great. 99 was not. It was fine. So yeah, I don't know.
Because all the computers are going to turn over to 2000 and forget what they were doing.
Yeah. I still need to see Viral. I saw 1 and I really liked it. I saw 2 and I didn't really like it that much. I never saw 3. Saw 94 and loved it. 99 was that. So we'll see. The VHS is all over the place, but I like it because it's,
anthology.
It's taking in all of this new blood, and some old familiar blood, and just giving them a chance to cook in a less formulaic way.
All blood,
a little weird.
Is good blood. We have a great interview with David Amito and Michael Laicini, the directors and writers of Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. Sean, do you have any final thoughts before we get to the interview?
I hope you guys don't die. I hope you make it. I hope we can't take the hit to the listenership, so you better
honestly, yeah. Well,
you guys better
think about that before promoting this.
Yeah. No, dude, it's talking with them was so great, and Antrum is such an interesting movie. I again highly recommend that you guys watch it first. It's definitely a full pay attention. You don't want ads. Do it in the dark. Really commit. Submit to it and have some fun, and then come hear us break it down with these guys. It's a good conversation.
On that note, we will get you guys over to our interview with David Amito and Michael Laicini from Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. We'll catch you on the other side for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. All right, we are joined today by David Amito and Michael Laicini. David and Michael are the co-writers and co-directors of Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. Guys, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
I'm so stoked to have you.
Absolutely. Sean and I were just telling Michael, I actually had forgotten when I first saw Antrum. Haven't watched it since deep in the throes of COVID and lockdown, but had forgotten that is when everything was viral, and want to jump into that in a second. But first, we start all of our conversations by asking a question to all of our guests. We want to know what your intros to the horror genre are. You guys obviously seem to have a deep respect for it, making this film, and we want to know about the earliest memories of you guys, as Sean normally says, maybe walking out into the living room and seeing something behind the couch that you maybe shouldn't have seen, or someone maybe renting a film and showing it to you that you probably shouldn't have watched at a certain age. But whoever wants to go first, would love to hear those memories.
Mike has some pretty fucked up stories, so yeah, you should definitely go first. Yeah.
I think for sure my introduction to horror was like reading. Right. So I was like a little kid and I read like crazy through, the Goosebumps.
Yes.
You couldn't give them to me like faster than I couldn't read. I read them so fast that like I was running out of them, and my mom started just sort of getting exhausted, taking me back to the bookstore, started just giving me like thicker Stephen King books just to like sort of keep me busier longer. So that was maybe not a great thing because I was reading,
bit of a jump.
Pet Sematary and Carrie and The Shining, all the staples. And I was reading my way through those to the point where teachers had to have like a meeting with my parents. They called a meeting saying, you cannot give this like grade 4-year-old Pet Sematary to read. We can't have other grade 14s like wondering what she's reading when he's reading these things. So that was definitely like where I started. I love that actually. And then I moved on to movies pretty quickly, but it was like slashers, like because they're kind of like Jason is scary, but not long lasting scary.
Yeah, sure.
But then I worked my way through those slashers so fast, and I was like in grade. I must have been like 10 or 11 at this point.
Wow.
And my dad was like, okay, he needs like to be satiated. Let's give him something that'll really scare him. And they wanted, my dad called a family meeting about it. He's like, do you think he's ready for The Exorcist? And I was like, game for it. I grew up Catholic. I'm not so much a practicing Catholic now, but I was, Catholic household, and I was familiar with the concept of possession.
Mm-hmm.
And I was all for this movie, and I made it. I made it to the point where she was stabbing herself and her head turns around. And it scared me on such a deep level that I mean, I asked my dad to turn it off. I did not sleep that night. And for the next like 10 years, I couldn't even walk by that movie on the shelf at the video store without like PTSD. I didn't even want to see it, because if I looked at the cover of it, it would give me nightmares again.
Yeah.
And it became sort of a rite of passage for me as I worked my way through other movies in the horror genre to work my way back up to that movie. And it wasn't until I was like 16 or 17 that I actually made it all the way through that movie. And then I've never gone back since. It's just been a slingshot to everything depraved since then.
Wow.
Oh, I feel that. Wow.
I love the thought of you being at recess and a kid being like, my dog died. And you're like, sometimes dead is better. And like, just like referencing, it's just Michael doesn't care.
Totally.
That's so good. And love the trajectory. I mean, Sean and I are huge Goosebumps fans. If you could see Sean's background, he has all the stacks.
Oh, is that right?
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's a bit out of shot, but I was a part of the fan club when I was about the same age you were reading them. So
right on.
Yeah, wasn't simultaneously doing Pet Sematary, but I was halfway there with you.
There's steps to this.
Yeah, there's like a huge jump from Say Cheese and Die to Pet Sematary. That was yeah.
That's funny. David, what about you?
Yeah. I think my introduction to horror was my mother, actually, just scaring me before bed. There was a story about if I'm not in bed by 8 o'clock, I don't know if you know the story. It's Wee Willie Winky. He's this little kid that has like a nightgown, and he has a little light, and he raps on the windows very gently to say if you're not in bed after 8 o'clock, he'll do that. But my mother is like half Austrian, half Sri Lankan, so she didn't say Wee Willie Winky. She said Wee Willie Winky. And, which is already like innately scary. Anything in a German accent, I'm half Jewish, so anything in a German accent is just terrifying.
I feel that. I feel that. Goldberg over here. I got you.
Yeah. Right on. So she says "Wee Willie Winky," and I was like, "Who is that?" And she described him totally different from the actual nursery rhyme. She was like, "He's like half vampire. He's got the teeth. He comes in there. He'll rap on the windows and he'll eat you if you're in bed after 8 o'clock." And I was so scared of that, and she made me so traumatized of it that I to this day I have a memory that registers as totally real. That I was in bed. I wanted to grab a book off my bookshelf. It was around 8 o'clock, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I can do it and get away, and Wee Willie Winky won't come after me." And I took one step out, and I was on the second floor of a house. Suddenly, my windows started to shake and rattle like fiercely. And then from the kitchen downstairs, I hear my mom go, Wee Willie Winky. And to this day, I am scared of this Wee Willie Winky figure. Totally irrationally so, and that's probably where like the irrational fears and conversations about that we addressed in Antrum kind of came about just how belief can be so pervasive. But my mother also, because she's like her mother was Austrian, so they have a kid's book called Strudelpeter. Yes. I don't know if you've ever seen that book, but that is a way to traumatize children into not doing things. Right? Yes. Like don't play with matches. or you're going to get burnt to a crisp. Don't suck your thumbs, or some guy is going to come in there with giant scissors and chop them off.
Loppers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the illustration. Each illustration is traumatized. By the time you finish that book, you can't go to sleep.
Yeah.
And you can't do any of the things in there. So my mom was my first introduction to horror, like unquestionably. and the reason why I'm so anxious today.
Sean and I went to a convention in New York not too long ago, and I can't remember what it is for the life of me, but it's a lot of weird, like it's a lot of booths, but it's people selling like taxidermied things, and then there was a booth that had like a pop-up book for Struwelpeter, which I'd never heard of before. And the lady at the booth was just like, "Do you want to take a look at this?" And just like the pop-up's really interesting. So I remember the thumb one. It was like you pull a tab and the thumbs come off on the page. But yeah, an interesting thing that I'd never heard of before when she was like, "Oh, it's a German, essentially like fairy tales for kids." I was like, that checks out on like every level.
No kidding.
So
no kidding.
Yeah, you talking about that.
Have you seen Austrian Christmas with Krampus, the Krampus parades?
No, I know of. I've seen the Michael Dougherty film Krampus, but I've never heard of the parades and stuff.
Yeah, that's a big thing there. So it's like, you have the Saint Nicholas who's like, brings presents. If you're a bad kid, Krampus comes and he like puts you in a sack and like beats you and like gives you like puts coals inside of your like Christmas stocking.
Yeah.
And the parades are intense. If you Google like Krampus parades, Austria,
it's almost a riot. Yeah,
it's hard
They're
to
amazing.
fathom. Yeah, man, like the psyche of the Austrian child must be so racked with anxiety. Yeah, exactly.
So we know where your guys' love for horror came from. I'm curious, Michael kind of teed this up before we started recording, but how did you guys meet? Obviously, co-writing and co-directing a film is a feat. I always say on this show whenever we talk to co-creatives that I can never understand that. It's so hard for me to give things up, like creative things up. So I'm really curious how you guys met and decided to work on this together.
Sure. I was an actor. I am an actor, and I auditioned for Mike's short film like right out of college. Not out of college, like literally in college. And
I was in film school at the time.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
And so I got cast and we worked together, and I brought to him my second project, and then he came to me with a third project idea. So we just started working together, and very quickly we kind of started writing the stories together, and it was kind of partitioned that he would direct them and I would star in them. And this was the first time that we kind of like directed something together. But I think we had created a shorthand with each other. We had created a vibe with each other where we were both kind of creating, and the whole titles of directing and acting. Because even when I was, in front of the camera, Mike would sometimes be like acting behind it because of the nature of this like mockumentary thing we did. So all the categories became great, and we just, and Mike, chime in anytime. I think we just wanted to tell like the best story we could, and often our like aesthetic entailed breaking the fourth wall, where we would kind of incorporate. We had a web series called Mr. Tom that we started to incorporate comments that people are making online into the narrative of the story, so that comments would drive the narrative. And so it there's this fictional the story is fiction, but the way people were responding to it was real. So they're caked into this very fictional narrative, became this very real element,
meta thing. Yeah,
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the way David and I work together, like I think the typical way of looking at a film set is you kind of want one. Approaching a film set anyways as a director, let's say, you kind of have that tension of like wanting to be the one in total control, and there's logistical reasons why that's important, but when it comes to creative reasons, I think David and I just instinctually have always shared the sensibility that the best idea rolls, and it doesn't matter who brought it to the table, right? So there's no competitiveness when David and I finally directed this thing together. That's really what drove us, right? It's like whoever could handle this particular situation that we're in the strongest, let's say. Like, let's say there was a technique with an actor that David would come up with that wouldn't have occurred to me. And you just got to read the room, right? So if that dynamic looks like it's really working for the right reasons, and the right reasons being all of the North Star ideals that you would have discussed previously when, our ambitions for the project, that kind of thing, then you just let it go. And then you work with it, and vice versa. If there was something that hit me, and thankfully that was like a relatively low stakes set where there wasn't 300 people standing around waiting for direction.
Right.
So I guess there's a time and a place for that level of fluidity and kind of up in the air, impulse driven, like really creatively driven stuff. But it really worked for us. Yeah. And I miss it because it's been like 10 years since we made Antrum, really. We shot Antrum in 2016 or 2015, 2016.
2014.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, then it was Christmas, so then it became 2015.
I was wondering
Exactly.
that because going through IMDb, just like prepping things, I'm seeing, headshots of Nicole Tompkins and Rowan Smith, who play Orly and Nathan in the inner film. And I'm like, they look so much older, but this film came out in 2019.
I miss 8-year-old Rowan. I miss him. He was such a cute kid. Yeah,
it's hard to see like Rowan now. Like a guy could bench press me, and he was like a 6-year-old kid. It's unreal, man. It's unreal.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and Nicole is also killing it. She's now Jill Valentine in the Resident Evil series.
Yes, and she's been in 2 games and now a motion capture movie too.
Yeah,
right.
That is so sick.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
We got really lucky with them. They're super talents. Both of them.
I love their performances. We'll break that down a little bit
awesome.
further in the interview for sure. I love hearing about it. It always is really impressive to me when we bring guests on that are collaborating in this way, where it's like a collaboration between writing and especially directing. Like you said, there are logistical reasons why kind of one vision, one voice could be helpful, and too many cooks in the kitchen could kind of mix that up, especially when you have an idea for something like it. It could be easy enough to come up with an idea and a general direction of something with somebody, but then once you start filming, it kind of takes on a life of its own, and you guys might be picking up on different sparks of that. So hearing that you guys are able to mesh that well is really great. With that, I'm curious.
Not without its tensions, of course.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's always beautiful. So
yeah. Getting through those rougher moments, it's like obviously you're going to have those tensions, but it's the ability to get through that together creatively, without forsaking like the project itself and what's best for the project. That's key. I'm curious how Antrum got started. Like, where did that idea come from? It's such an interesting idea that, it feels familiar, but it's also pretty, it's very unique. This idea of this cursed film inside of a sort of a documentary representation of it. Can you guys walk us through?
I've been let David take the charge on this
Sure.
one. But I want to state for the record,
yes,
because it's been a little frustrating to see some of the general flippant online feedback of the movie being that we made Antrum first, and that the documentary wraparound was just sort of a cynical marketing like ploy for us to get what otherwise would have been a movie that might not have made it to the mainstream noticed.
Got it.
The movie from the get-go was made with the wraparound, like thematically, metasexually. That was always a part of the fabric of it. But David has so much to do with the inception of it that he kind of has to take the rest of it from here.
I want to say really quickly that I never thought that. I never got that idea.
Same.
It seemed very intentional here, and
intentional.
I'm now that you say it, I understand. Like, of course, there are people that think that now that I'm in my head, but like nah, hard disagree.
It's the internet. There's people that think everything. That's
everything. Exactly. Yes,
every possible thing. Yeah,
right.
So I'll tell you that how I came up with the first conception of the idea, but also this will speak to how intertwined Mike and I were at this point, because it was definitely also influenced by our previous workings together and just many conversations about horror and story and the things that got us going
Sure.
But we were working on a film called. We were working on trying to get another story off the ground, and it wasn't really moving. And as I was writing it, I was thinking, this is not really scary. So what would really scare me? And I'm just naturally a very superstitious person. I present myself as very rational and intellectually oriented, but say some bullshit to me once, I'll be like, it's bullshit. Say it 2 times and I'll believe it. And I don't want to, it just happens,
They double down.
yeah, exactly. But twice, and it's gotta be real.
Yeah.
So I thought of a way it'd be so scary if a 13-year-old version of me was watching a movie that was they told me up front, this is cursed and shit can happen to you if you watch it. So it very much speaks to like The Ring, but if you were actually watching The Ring. And I just saw this disclaimer up on this, on the screen, were like really the release of liability disclaimer, which I think is like one of the highlights of the film, where basically that you're going to get into something that is physically dangerous, and now you are a character in the film. And I spoke to Mike about this story, and Mike was like, found it very compelling. And then we spoke about what the film in the film could be. And he had this story like a year or two before about these, and it was an inexplicable story. Like he was almost like relaying to me a vision. That's at least how I remember it. And the vision was about these 2 children that just go into the woods and start to dig a hole to hell. And the mystery about why are they doing this, all this, was just so compelling to us. And it was around that time that Mike had showed me a YouTube video. And Mike will tell you more about this one. It was a really masterfully made YouTube video that, I think we can credit a lot with some of the inspiration is that it really felt like it was cursed. Like there was a curse like behind it. And it was that kind of inspiration that drove us. Mike, do you remember the name of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the filmmaker anymore, unfortunately. The name has escaped me, but the YouTube video itself, if you type in "there is nothing" or "kitchen there is nothing," and the JPEG should be like this creepy lady sitting in front of some fire.
David Earl?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Interesting.
I saw that thing in films. I saw this clip in film school. It's like 10 seconds, but there's just it might be overhyping it now, but at the time that I first encountered it completely randomly without like any real reason, nobody showed it to me. I just encountered it. It just chilled me to my bone. There was something so off-putting about it, so unnatural. And I think you'll like it when you see it. And so it became sort of a litmus test or like a Rorschach test for me, like around film school, to show people who I may or may not get along with. Like if I showed you this clip and you really it blew your mind in the same way that it blew my mind, then we're going to be good friends, right? But if I show you this clip and you never want to talk to me again because who the fuck was that weirdo, which has also happened since grade school with Stephen King in the playground, then I know we're not going to get along. But that's okay. Yeah,
sure.
You really filtered out all the sane people from being your friend.
Yeah.
I isolated myself. Yeah.
Who needs them anyway?
And my first date with my now wife a long time ago was to go see Eraserhead, like a midnight screening of Eraserhead. And I had seen it once before, so it was a similar kind of thing for me. Like if she really likes this, then this is going to be awesome.
She's the one.
And she became the one. Yeah, she loved it.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's
great.
Funny. I there was a back when this kind of really blew up in 2019-ish. There was a Fango article that you guys did. And David, you have a quote which I'm going to try to paraphrase, but basically just saying, between the two of you, you've digested a lot of horror films. It's not easily, the rush of being truly and deeply scared is not easily accomplished. Your fear receptors are fried. Was that kind of another, ethos behind this, like trying to find another way to convey horror that's different than the normal, run-of-the-mill
definitely
stuff that you see?
Yeah, well, we tried. I mean, I think it came from like the premise that there's nothing more scary than what you can make for yourself.
Yeah.
And the film itself is not filled with like a lot of gore or is not filled with scares in the conventional sense of things jumping out and scaring you. What we're trying to do is what we attempted to do, and how successful we are or not is like totally a subjective thing. But what we attempted to do was to wake up the negative space in the audience, and to make, just knowing that this film is cursed, to contextualize it in that frame. And so each audience member is kind of bringing their own movie to the movie. Mike and I joke that we made an experimental horror film, but we never told any of the distributors that, because we know we never would have had any distribution if we had the word experimental in there.
Yeah. We banned the word experimental. Yeah.
Exactly. But essentially, it was an experimental film to see, like, can we attempt a new a form of it that just our brains aren't used to, and that maybe the act of it being something so novel or so new is going to speak to people. Another thing that, with films like, I felt it with Audition, but films like Cannibal Holocaust, you feel like who is behind this movie? Like, they have to be kind of a certain kind of fucked up, and that's what makes you like ill at ease. And we attempted to do that as well, where you don't know who the actual filmmakers are, especially if you go into the film like not having read anything about it, which the bulk of our TikTok audience had. They just saw some TikTok person, and we didn't do any promotion on TikTok either. Like, we were literally told,
completely organic.
Yeah, that like we're blowing up on TikTok, and we were kind of like, the dancing thing, like, how is that like possible?
Like, I had to download
right?
TikTok.
Yeah,
my nephew like texted me, said your thing's all over TikTok, and I was like, oh god, I guess I got to download TikTok to investigate this. So I didn't have it.
Wow.
Exactly. So a lot of the people that were there were just heard about this cursed film, so it could kind of, if they don't know who's the filmmakers behind it, like, there's something you can't trust about it. And that's that's always what indie horror, I think, does best over studio horror. Like, if you see like DreamWorks or Universal in front of a horror film, it's immediately safe.
Yep.
And to quote The Neverending Story, we wanted to make a story that wasn't safe.
Yeah.
And that was our and there is a certain fairy tale aspect to it. So there is a certain Lifeblood reference to
the mom.
The Neverending Story.
Mom kind of scars Nathan as the inciting incident of this movie,
100%.
and your mom scarred you as the inciting incident of your sort of horror artistry.
Full circle.
This whole thing is like, I'm starting to unpack Antrum a little more.
Yeah, Antrum too should just feature V. Billy Vinky.
Oh,
and the
shit.
middle here will be like interviews with your mom about childhood trauma.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my god, you're writing it already.
Nice. Yeah. Right.
So you talked a little bit about this. You brought up like The Ring, but I'm curious about your guys' thoughts. I'm kind of fusing two of our questions here, so bear with me. I'm kind of curious of your guys' thoughts on stories that kind of take the concept of evil imagery or listening. I think of like the Lords of Salem and the evil record player, and obviously the tape from The Ring. And I don't know if you guys saw Sinister, but the film footage and then the paintings and stuff before that. I'm curious of your guys' thoughts on just that concept and folklore. And then also, sorry, it is a two-parter, but also just like I don't think that you guys did this as the marketing tactic. The weird comments that you guys have been hearing from, I think you said like 11-year-olds or whatever, that were that didn't understand the movie. But I'm curious of your guys' thoughts on similar like things, like movies that put based on a true story at the beginning when it's very loosely based. Like things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or even The Strangers,
or Fargo.
Yeah. Yes, or even just like using kind of, I guess this is a bit off, but like a hotel that might really lean into the haunted aspect to bring in people to stay. Like, sorry, that's kind of all over, but I'm just curious if your guys' thoughts on those things.
Well, I mean, I don't really have a problem with anybody attempting anything. That's part of the reason why I kind of consider the argument of does pineapple belong on pizza, like, really stupid. Like, if you don't like pineapple on pizza, that's okay. But if you are taking a hard stand against people who like pineapple on pizza, and I'm one of them, I'll take that stand right now. Like, I actually think what you're standing against is creativity. Like, good Lord. Like, I never would have thought to put basil and cottage cheese with a piece of watermelon either. But I tried it one day because someone else said it was a good idea, and my God, it was a treat for my mouth. So when it comes to like people doing things like trying to brand or market or position a movie as a loosely based on a real thing, I don't look at that cynically.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to initially anyways. I try to let the movie be what it wants to be. Let the artist, say what they want to say and attempt what they want to attempt. And whether it works for me or not is one thing. And I most of the time I approach it hoping it will work. And I think, what made us able to finish Antrum at the end of the day, because it was a long process to get it from when we shot it to when it was finished, was just that idea. It's like, nobody's really attempted this straightforward of like, we've been dancing around this concept for a long time. Let's just fucking do it as like horror fans, and let's see what happens. And so I was excited by it. I was propelled through the whole process on that alone. Was that just conceptually, this was something that it was like the pineapple on pizza. Like it was right there under our nose the whole time. Let's make it work. And
absolutely.
I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
no,
let's
it is
100%.
Yeah. But a cursed, as far as like cursed content, like that's, I think, at my earliest days too, like, the Scary Stories books. That's another thing I forgot to mention, was I was really into those Stephen Gamble illustrations.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And I still have them. Like I have the Scary Stories 1, 2, and 3 on my shelf. And the stories are not as scary as they used to be to like a 10-year-old, but the pictures are still terrifying.
Yeah.
And the pictures those feel like cursed images, especially when you're young and you open that book. It's like, my God, I don't even need to read. I don't even need to be able to be able to read to understand that this book is horrifying.
Yeah.
Because those illustrations are so, they activate the negative space thing in your brain so majestically. And so, I think even from an early age, it's just sort of, I think we're all just sort of moved by things that feel illicit. The video stores used to have a curtain around the horror section, right?
Yeah.
And that just made it all the more scary when I was little, right? Like, because you'd peek through there and you would just see any number of random horrifying images, and then you close the curtain and you have to go home with that and unpack whatever what the fuck is behind that curtain.
Yeah.
We had a different section behind the curtain.
I was wondering more about that too. Yeah.
There were two curtains.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't go behind the wrong curtain. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that question's kind of all over the place, but I think it might have been in David's answer. You were talking about, and you just touched on it again, Michael, but that idea of like the negative space in the audience mind and kind of bringing the audience in. And I think hearing you talk made me realize that like it's, especially for deep, intense horror fans, it's kind of like you climb these levels, it's you're putting these images and these ideas into your head, and it's almost like you're poisoning yourself with them, with a scary story or with a movie or a scary book. And then over time you become desensitized and you need to keep turning up the juice. So there's just something about, watching a movie that's supposed to be based on a true story that takes it to a different level. And then eventually you end up at something like Antrum, where it's like, okay, well, I've already poisoned my mind enough. I need something that's actually going to poison my soul, if at all possible.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's the thing. You like there's the breaking of the fourth wall, right? And when that's when the movie exists outside of its runtime, and now can actually endangers you. And through symbology and stuff like that, every symbol we would have had to have been taught, like what it means and what it stands for, why it's scary or not, right? Whether it's a swastika or like the number 88 that they had, that only somewhat recently I discovered what that meant in some circles, but not like there's a market in Vancouver called 88 Market, which is an Asian market, because 88 is an auspiciously lucky number. So it's interesting that the same symbol can represent different things depending on how they've been defined and by what culture. And I think with any good horror film, you're entering in a new culture where they're like, this means that. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like what we did with the Astaroth sigils, for example, we conditioned you to now that this sigil being present can have some effect in your life. But we deliberately did not actually use the actual Astaroth symbol. We've modified it because we wanted it, to be our own thing, and two, to foster an investigative attitude towards the film. Just like we were really hoping that someone would maybe be terrified by it and then really think to re-examine the film with a rational point of view and maybe realize certain inconsistencies that we've deliberately put in, or certain things that remain unanswered. Like, for example, whether the boy Rowan dies at the end, Nathan, whether he dies at the end. It seems to have been taken for granted. And a lot of people online were just like, yeah, of course, he's dead. And we're like, that's so interesting that people came to that conclusion when we did not provide that conclusion, and yet and even took measures to build in an answer to that question. So
yeah, that was like, if I can go as far as to say this, Dave, like when Dave first wrote the script, and he gave it to me, and obviously there was a period where I read it, and we were going to dissect it together and do another few drafts together or whatever. And I remember the first time I read the script, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I went to work the next day, and I was still thinking about it, and getting ready for my meeting with David. I think it might have been 2 days or something before we chatted about it, because I wanted to sit with it. But I had this like lightning bolt moment, and I thought it was my idea. And I was like, I ran home from work basically, and I went through the script again. I'm like, oh, she only fires the gun 5 times in the course of the movie, and that's clear in the script. And then in my mind, I had to deduce, like, well, the gun was found in the suicide force. There may or may not have. It's clearly a revolver. It said it was a revolver in the script. It's clearly a revolver in the movie on purpose. So I had to deduce whether there was actually a 6th bullet in the chamber, and it's safe to assume that maybe there wasn't, because the gun was probably used at least once, right? It's a thing found in a suicide force. So during my meeting with David, I came to him. I'm like, Dave. You don't understand. There's like a surprise twist ending to this movie. And he's like, yeah, I know. And the fact that he had put that already in there, I had such an ecstatic, like, I thought I had the idea on my own, first of all, but I came to that conclusion completely on my own. And then the whole movie took off for me, because thematically, the movie is a conversation about faith, among a few things, a superstition, faith, and how misguided faith can make us. Irrational fears based on faith can really lead us astray. And so the fact that what David was just saying about the movie, that there's sort of a groundwork there for a rational examination of the plot. When you get over your fear of it, if you had any, and you reapproach the movie really sensibly, the movie encourages that. At least we intended on encouraging that, and some people who will watch the movie in that way, we encourage that mindset. And it's just sort of a general value system that I think we both share, that, if more people were a little more rational about their faith in day-to-day life, the world might be like, 5% better, 5% more tolerable to live in. There's nothing wrong with religion, but there's definitely, a lot wrong with how people process it and allow it to guide them into dangerous states. And the movie takes a shot at that conversation. I mean, it puts every major symbol of religion on each end of the pentagram at one point. That was by design,
Yeah, I
absolutely,
David. I love the rational approach. I mean, Sean and I are very skeptical people, with the slight caveat of the alien stuff happening currently. But David, you listed 2 reasons why you changed the Astaroth symbols. Is the third reason because you were slightly afraid that if you did put these symbols in the film,
that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, that, I mean, if that's true, I may have hidden that from myself, but just know that that's a distinct possibility, because I'm actually a very superstitious person.
I would be the same, where it's like, I just don't want to chance it. It's not that I believe it. I just don't want to be responsible for anything.
Exactly. The just in case scenario. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
If I can say
You-
one more thing on that same topic, even the composer of the movie, Alicia Fricker, who did a beautiful job with the composition of the score, the binaural beats that are laced throughout the movie are also not of, like, there are frequencies that are said to be negative, right? And induce very bad things in people. And we didn't totally want to chance that either. So the frequencies in the movie are of a safer range, still an uncomfortable range, but we went as far as to, like,
well,
we don't
some of
wanna
them
hurt-
as far
we
to
don't-
foster love, and I think that
Yeah.
would be, again, if someone was to actually break down the frequency of these binaural beats, they'd realize that there's an opposite narrative to the one they've been told. And
Interesting.
till we talk about the critical nature of religion here, but I think it's even more specific in how we've done it with Antrum. It has to do with the orator for these religions, and the girl Oralee is literally telling, proselytizing to Nathan a religion in order to help him. So she comes at it with good intentions, but that's usually where religion goes wrong. It's like someone says, "Oh, the Bible," or the Jewish Bible, the Quran, that says this, so it means in this modern day this, and so we need to do this, and it becomes a call to action in certain cults and stuff like that, and it becomes a political thing. And I think that's where we are telling you something right off the bat, but question this aspect. And I think there's a certain amount of anyone that listens to this podcast is not going to get the effect, I think, of the film than if you just randomly found it and we're like, what the hell is this? And that you don't know about us putting anything in there, or we've done the opposite, or all these other things, and people that have just come across it have been left traumatized, and then have had to ask questions and have reached out to us. Is this movie really cursed? Am I really going to die? And a number of times, Mike and I have had to address on Instagram, no, you're not going to die. It got a little. I started to feel.
At one point in the pandemic, there was a teenager, a young boy, who was convinced that the movie was telling him to kill himself, and he told me as much. So I had to have that kind of talk down. Like, that was a DM I was not expecting, and had to have sort of that talk down with them and encourage them everything's okay and that kind of thing. And it worked out all right.
Wow.
But to speak about the negative space of the film, though, I did say that it woke up a negative space in us of, like, what can releasing this film possibly do?
Yeah.
And you hear about, like, theater shootings and stuff like that. And it's like, you don't want to be responsible for having made something irresponsible, and you never really know how a piece of art is going to be, like, received by someone. And is there art that maybe can be more suggestive than others? And so these were actual questions that, like, went through our minds when releasing it. I definitely was like, ooh, I hope people can understand that this is a movie. And so every chance we have, we tell people, or at least I do, I tell people this is a movie. I'm not going to, in real life, tell them that this is, like, more than an act of fiction, just because I don't want, I don't know. Like, there's part of this movie hits a negative space in me that I'm still a little uneasy with it. And I like that this conversation's, like, make fun of it and everything like that. But I just don't know. And it made me reevaluate, like, all my future screenplays, like how much of an effect I can be having, and is it an effect that might be a dangerous one, an insightful one? I don't know. And that's
especially these days,
result.
everything seems so volatile. Like, every single thing is volatile, including, like, who the Little Mermaid is.
Yes.
It's like, everything these days is exhaustingly with everything has a let's use, it seems like. So
yeah. I to your pineapple on pizza point, which I completely agree with, not the pineapple on pizza part, but the creativity aspect part. Sean and I have had this conversation. I think we notably had it with Phil Nobile from Fango, where how far is too far. And I think with the exception of screaming fire in a crowded theater and those sort of things. And I don't want to go down a freedom of speech rabbit hole, but I guess referencing like the Slender Man, murders or whatever it's called, like, the person who created the Slender Man sleepy pasta should in no way feel responsible for what happened. I completely understand, though, the point of view as a creative, that's always going to be a burden, that's always going to be something you're at least thinking about. But it's really tough that we are currently in a society. I don't want to say like live in a society, like it's just a nature of the society where we have to think about those things. Because from my point of view, you should never withhold your art. Like if you want to make something, you make it, unless it's like, hate speech and that sort of stuff, like then holster it, but or don't have hate speech in general, but it's tough to think that it's tough to think that you have to have maybe some creative things held back because you're worried about repercussions or what people may do. But it is really interesting to hear that that's a thought that you've had.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, the Slender Man thing, I think of everything from the Slender Man incident to something like, even the death of John Lennon and Catcher in the Rye to
it's like my mind went there too.
But even stuff as simple as debates about decisions that protagonists make and that encouraging, like incel type of men, like we are in this really weird space where we're like hyper critiquing art, and addressing the impacts that it has on people, and it's an important conversation to have, but it could easily go in either direction. And I think it's important that artists are at least reflecting on the potential, thinking about potentially what releasing it will do to the world. But ultimately, the people that are going to react a certain way will find some, like, I feel like that's in them already, like those little girls with the Slender Man incident probably would have found another character. But that's super interesting. It's funny that approaching this conversation, my brain hadn't gone here yet. So I really appreciate that you brought it up.
It's interesting too, where a lot of like the paradigms that I'm seeing a lot more now is it's not intention, it's effect. And I've heard that articulated a number of times. And I don't know, I'm inclined not to agree with that, because it's just like, I do believe a person's intentions of what they went into something with is if they were innocent intentions or good intentions and the effect is bad, how could someone be held culpable for that, in my mind? And Asen Gadulov, he's the film philosopher that you see in the film. He's actually my like acting teacher. He's this like Bulgarian method acting guru, and my like acting started with him. And he's always had just the richest ideas. And when I asked him about this film, he told me, and it might even be in like an outtake that just never made the movie, but what he said is that that when you make a piece of art, that once it's made and you give it over, you're not really responsible for how people run with it. Like, I don't think that David Fincher or Edward Norton or Brad Pitt intended for incel communities to like latch on to Fight Club the way that's happening, Yes. And I think that's an important distinction to know, right? As opposed to if someone was, like you said, like a Nazi or a hateful person, deliberately making a ideologically propaganda like film intended to incite, right? Like if it's a piece of art, it's a different situation. And we are attempting to not make a piece of, propaganda or an ideological film, but we're trying to explore the human condition, especially with respect to belief and with this thing. But one can't help but just wonder if some material is more conducive to crazy stuff happening or not, right? Like, although, there was a shooting in an Amy Schumer film once that was a comedy, right? So to say that this like comedy film inspired a shooter would be insane, even though she herself was very regretful she even made the movie, from what I remember of interviews, which I thought was just shows like how much, if something bad does happen, how you will blame yourself, how you will, feel a certain culpability. And so, I was worried we made one of those films, but also every subsequent film I've now started to think about if something happens, and I think that's a weird,
it's a weird place to be in, and it doesn't have any easy answers. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but also Fight Club is that's over 20 years later, and the incels are taking onto it now. So what's going to happen 20 years from now with Antrum? You know what I mean? Right. And I think the movie will have different incarnations, and I hope that people latch onto it for the reasons that we want them to. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. We never know, and I think that's what my teacher was saying. You never know how someone will run with your art, and so there we are.
I love it. It's an interesting point of view. And I'm glad to Sean's point, not something we have on our list of topics to talk about, but really glad we went there because it's a very interesting discussion that Sean and I have frequently, even off of the show. Not to jump away from a deep conversation, but want to talk about a couple more aspects of the film while we have you guys. Want to break down elements of the frame story first, right? So Michael, you talked about how people said that the docudrama aspect of things came after the fact, but obviously Sean and I think it's understand it's very intentional. Some of those elements in the docudrama, or the frame story as I'll call it, are the most effective to me. There's the moments like the narrator saying that this was bought in an estate sale, but the filmmakers think that it may have been edited by a third party. Like that aspect of things is really interesting. David, you brought up the countdown timer disclaimer, which I think is one of the you're agreeing to submit to this film, and I love that moment so much. I'm curious, points of the frame story that people may not notice, or that are some of your favorites that you put in there as Easter eggs or elements to ratchet up the nature of the Cursed film.
Well, definitely the just the lore that we're laying down, that was all very intentional, all meant to drive the main drive of the suspense of the movie comes from the documentary, really, because like David said earlier, there's not a scare every 5 minutes. It's a intentionally drier horror movie that's meant to just sort of be a cerebral, is something happening to me, right? So all that's pretty obvious as far as what that documentary stuff's accomplishing in the beginning. A detail about the documentary that I wish was more sort of mainstream, sort of acknowledged, was it's related to the metatextual thematic layer of the movie, which is when Orally is telling Nathan that the world is a certain way, like we're going to go out into the woods and there's this whole process we're going to go through where we're going to find Maxine. And she details the layers of hell, and she makes it all very clear to him what the rules of her religion are, and what he should be weary of and what he should be afraid of during their journey. David and I very intentionally picked a narrator for the documentary that was female and sort of spoke to the audience in a similar sing-songy kind of cadence that Orally spoke to her little brother with, and that's by design, because effectively what's happening to you during the documentary is what's happening to Nathan throughout the movie. We're being told what to be on edge about. We're being told what the world of the religion of Antrum is, right? And hopefully, like we said earlier, that's something that people can maybe people will start appreciating, that there's a rational approach to, once you get over the fun of the horror of it, which is by design too. We want people that the main intention of this movie is have some fun. It's a haunted house, right? And some people who have really responded to that. I think that there's some people there. One out of every 75 reviews or something you read online, the movie has really clicked for some, a horror fan who has scratched an itch, a very unique itch for a horror fan out there, and they totally get it. Maybe I'm getting the impression that you two are part of that crowd, which I appreciate. But yeah, look, some of my thoughts about the documentary. Dave, have any?
I really I like the 1970s aesthetic that we were very meticulous about trying to to recreate that with the, you know, the scratches, the film grain, the color, even down to the wardrobe. I think they even speak in 1970s films to in a certain I don't know if you guys get this, but if you go back like every 10 years, it seems like the culture has a way of talking, especially in media and movies, that I find like so fascinating, you know, and it's so interesting how it changes. So we attempted to address that kind of cadence and ways that, so it really felt like a 1970s artifact. That's something that I'm like proud of, and I think it's also, the more invisible that it is and doesn't draw attention to itself, the more authentic it is, you know. So in a way, I'm happy that, you know, it was convincingly so, especially since we shot it on digital, and it was just a magical series of filters and grading and all sorts of treatment that made it seem like a 70s film as best we could with the resources we had.
I would never have thought that was shot on digital. I thought you guys got like an old film camera and whipped it out.
even down to the selection of the digital camera was selected to be one that what is it, Sony FS100? Was it?
Yeah,
Mike,
it was something that had just like a much flatter profile, like cinematically, and so we tried to lay the groundwork, right, to set ourselves up.
Yeah.
Because if we would have shot it with a red, there's just something
too crisp.
It's so crisp, but there's something so distinctly digital about that camera. Mm-hmm. You can see it all over Netflix. Like in the early days when it was like House of Cards, like there was a distinct digital. That was around the time we were shooting this thing, right?
Yeah.
There's just a distinct look. So we knew we couldn't shoot film, but we had to set ourselves up with a camera that would allow us to get where we needed to get, and that's where we started.
Yeah. One other thing that I want to touch on, the scariest part of this film, and the part that has stuck with me since 4 years ago when I first watched this, and affected me similarly. I texted Sean, we were watching it separately the other night, and I said, this part is still really gives me the heebie-jeebies. But the you playing chicken with the face of the devil, the all black man, man fading into the all black, just staring at you, is one of the most unsettling visual things that I've seen in quite some time. I think that there are moments of films that are really unsettling for X, Y, and Z, but I think the nature of how that's shot and the very subtle separation from the all black background and then this man's face, and the fact that you are literally playing chicken, just am I going to continue to stare at this person for the whole time? It is
sorry to interrupt, but because I know, just in case Mike says something, Mike or Steve, all of you guys, we should not tell you anything about this scene, because we can risk imploding that entire moment for you for the rest of your life, and you will never find it scary again. So I think you should not hear the background about it.
I want to know. I will say the first moment that we watched this, I actually, to set the scene, during quarantine, me, Sean, and one of our friends lived together, and I bought a projector screen, and we were watching every night a film because we couldn't go to the movies. We were projecting.
Nice.
Like 16
outside or
thing.
inside?
Inside.
Okay.
Our living room was all decked out. It was pretty dope.
Yeah.
But
cool.
we threw on Antrum because it obviously had popped off, and I remember after that scene hits, we all looked to each other and we're like, what the fuck? Like, did you all just watched, like, you stared that whole time, right? Like, you didn't look away. I really want to know the backstory though, if there's an interesting one.
We need to wake up the negative space to...
Yeah, I have a way of addressing this though, with honoring what, because I agree with David. If we let you peek behind the curtain on this one, one of them,
it's the Wizard of Oz kind of scenario. Like anything, you really gotta choose your words carefully here. Yeah.
But I'll tell you like where that came from, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, first of all, there's no greater provocation of the main propulsion of suspension in this movie than that moment, right? It's a culmination of everything the movie was telling you, that there's something in this movie that's going to get you, and at some point in the movie, we wanted the audience to have to confront that, right? and it's sort of a subversion that happens pretty much in the middle of the movie instead of at the end of the movie where you'd expect it to be. So there's that. I'll leave that there. But as horror fans, like what drove, like where did this idea for this shot come from? The only connective tissue I can really grasp onto is like when I was a kid, there was nothing scarier to me for a short period of time than a board game called Nightmares. Where you guys don't know it? Okay,
No,
well it's a board game that was designed for you to put in front of your TV. So you put up it's a board game. I think it involves getting around the board in a certain amount of time before something gets you. And the something that gets you in this case is a VHS that came with the board game. You put it in you put it in your player, and there's like 6 variations of this game, and every variation of the game comes with a different demon that's going to sit on the TV and watch you play this game and harass you. He like literally tell you that you're stupid and like you're too slow and try and occasionally will say things that will screw up the trajectory of the game. But I was a little kid when I first encountered this game, and just sitting with that board game and that presence over your shoulder, watching you, right? It's not watching you, it's a VHS. That's part of where, like, just the design of this scare, I think came from, and not super intentionally, but when I think about everything in hindsight, that's where I think that's the birthplace of the idea, part of the idea of this scare. I mean, David brought a lot to the table too, as far as like, how the whole movie connects to the reason for this scare is so important. It's not just a throwaway like gag, right? The whole thing, the movie culminates in almost every way to this moment.
Yeah.
But I think just creatively, that's sort of where it came from. That game Nightmares, it's just a super sticky thing that stayed with me my whole life.
It's also a reminder that you've been watching this narrative between these two kids, and we're just reminding you that you're also a character in this movie. And you're gonna the very ending, like the last bookend of the documentary that's all about what happens to your character.
Yeah.
And it also speaks to the power of belief too. With a lot of people on TikTok now, they posted like they're reporting like strange happenings and occurrences that even if you believe in this movie hard enough, whether it's real or not is it doesn't really matter. Yeah. You're gonna notice certain things occurring to you as a result of it, and that just speaks to the power of your belief. And it was nice to see some kind of real life what's the word I'm looking for, validation that we did sense something about this topic or this element about the human condition that we've managed to tap into. Maybe not in a mainstream level, but definitely has hit people. And it's interesting what they say like constitute a curse. Like I watched Antrum, and then we put something in the microwave and it exploded. So Antrum made my microwave explode. You know what I mean? It's like, all right.
No, that was tinfoil. You shouldn't have done
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm like super happy that you guys love that moment. Like that's just, validation for us as creatives is, we all have horror movie moments that have stuck with us, right? And for us to have come anywhere near creating one that potentially will stick with you is what it's all about for us. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, of course. And we mean it. I have been a spooky fan since I was a kid, but a diehard horror fan since I was 10. I've seen a lot of shit. It takes a lot to get me, and especially when it comes to more like, I've seen a million devils, I've seen a million symbolic creepy moments, and the fact that you actually made me feel like you're like something was looking at me through your movie. The fact that there is a scene where a man is playing with a dead deer, and the thing that I remember is this dark moment when I forgot about the deer. Like that is mind-blowing to me that you know what I mean? Like I rewatching the movie, I was like, oh yeah, that's fucked. I forgot about that. But I remember that, that 15 seconds of black with that guy staring at me or however long it is. So
awesome.
Can I
don't
tell you
say
a
it.
moment about that deer thing? Since we're not gonna ttell you behind the scenes of this deed.
Yeah, please do.
Maybe another behind the scenes story will compensate you. The day that we shot that, so we put we set decorated, we put the deer on the ground, and the actor was standing there in his underwear, and we were ready to shoot. And he and it just so happens that day, because of where we were shooting, it was like that was the junkyard of a really popular guy in Ojai. And so he had like all his son's friends had like texted each other. So behind the camera there was and hidden in like the barns and peeking through the windows was this hidden audience watching us film this scene. So it was probably like one of the higher stakes moments on the movie for us, just sort of because we were otherwise alone in the forest. Anyways, camera's ready, everyone's in positions, and the actor who's playing that guy with the horns, Circus Selensky.
Yeah.
He was amazing, and he went full method. He never broke character. He never even dealt with any of the kids ever, like as a person, until we wrapped. Then he finally introduced himself as himself instead of as this monster that he wanted to keep some.
We deliberately did that for the two of them.
Yeah.
We told them to like just look at them antagonistically from the other end of the set and to never
Talk to them,
interact.
yeah.
So they were nervous just naturally being around them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was
It's
great.
so
for the
easy
children.
to manipulate kids. I know, yeah. It's like I felt like a real
Traumatize the children
Yeah.
for the sake of art. For the
my
art.
Lars von Trier moment. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's why we started this interview with you guys being like, they're both doing so well. Like you just had to remind yourselves that.
Yeah. Right. This admission and we're canceled. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, we were in position for that shot, right? And I was ready to yell action, and all of a sudden the circus gets up from the deer, and something looks like it's bothering him, and he walks over to us and he whispers to us in his like character accent, "I don't fuck male deer." And I didn't think I heard him properly, but I was like, "Pardon, what?" And he goes, "I don't fuck male deer." And I thought all of a sudden that we were going to have this crisis with an actor, because we didn't totally know this person, right? All of a sudden he's pulling some diva shit that is now going to fuck up the whole day. I have no idea. And we had a standoff with him. He was just maintained eye contact. And then maybe after an uncomfortable amount of time, it felt like 30 seconds to me, but it must have been like 6 seconds, a little tiny smile, just to indicate that he was just fucking with us. And then he went back to the deer and did the scene. But he was a lot of fun to work with. Yeah, he scared us.
It was also the most nerve-wracking shoot ever, because we literally had a murder there that day. We were fighting the sun sets here at this ridiculous time in the winter, so we were fighting the light, and for us to get fucked with during that day was just literally shooting with two demons. It's like, really, you're gonna do this now? All right. But
I think he was privy to that. I think he was just trying to alleviate some tension and having some fun, and it I don't know that it worked. It threw me off.
those people that were watching it were filming on their phones. So there's probably at that period a whole hashtag Ojai bestiality. He was probably trending briefly in Ojai with
yeah.
And people asked us like, why did you do that? And I was like, they like I didn't know how to answer. It's like, but why did you do that? Why a deer? Why is he having sex with the deer? And I just kept getting these questions like, well, fucking, I don't know. This because it's disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, I think in that moment in that movie, we just wanted to disarm you, right? Because the movie's pretty, you kind of coast for a little while in the movie on a certain vibe, right? And you don't know exactly how demented this movie's going to get. So all of a sudden, there's a guy fucking a deer. It sort of feels like the seatbelt's off now, right? Like we're not really safe anymore. Anything could happen was the intention of that moment.
Exactly. And we really wanted that moment to play in a wide, so that you can, when you're seeing it, you don't even really know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And that once it finishes happening, you're like, oh my God, like, did I see what I thought I saw? We didn't want it to be like, and that it could have, some people could have missed it if they weren't really looking, but I think it's like, we wanted people to like process it. And that's kind of our approach with the whole film. Like if you process it, it's going to have a different, your brain is going to do weird things with this movie. And that was, that was definitely deliberate. And speaking to a certain 70s aesthetic of how sometimes I think I must have seen in 70s movies where you'd see this like weird fucking thing happen in the background. You're like, oh, like that's fucking weird. Or that's a interesting, like, you know, plot point.
I saw it as, I describe like a Long Island there. This is a weird metaphor maybe for you guys, but when telling people about like the Long Island iced tea drink, some people be like, I hate tequila. And I try to explain to them, like, you need the tequila because it's the anchoring point for everything else. Like it's the heaviest taste and everything else is like kind of sweet on top. So without that, that's this moment in the movie for me. I wrote down, the fucked nature of the men characters. It really like anchors down and evens out the movie from some of it. You see satanic imagery in horror movies all the time. You see like a lot of these things that can feel kind of trivial when you watch a lot of stuff. And so, yes, you set this tone for so much of the movie, and then all of a sudden there's bestiality, you know, it's this just like terrible. And so I think it made everything else feel heavier. I completely get what you were doing. I think you nailed it. And without like focusing on it too, like if you would have focused on it would have been too much.
We didn't judge. Exactly. Because that would be us judging the moment. Like, look how fucked they are. Here it's like, again, the unsafe filmmaker. It's like, yep, just bestiality, just a normal day. And you know.
Yes. Yeah. The casualness of it is part of what's so fucked about it. Like it's 100%. Loved it. And if someone asked, was it really necessary? Yes, it was. It was absolutely necessary.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. I love the thought of you talking about how it plays in the wide shot. I love, you know, the thought of whoever came up with the term mise en scène. You know, they never would have thought that you'd be talking about a guy fucking a deer and like the way that your shot is sculpted. I love that. So guys, we've absolutely loved talking about Antrum with you. We could dive into more things forever, but
so much more.
We want to end the conversation how we end all of our interviews, which is with a segment that we call Mostly Horror Recommendations. You guys obviously are lovers of the genre, so if you would both give us a horror film and then a non-horror film or media in general that you guys would recommend to the listeners, we would appreciate it. Whoever wants to go first, feel free.
I'm a little late to the game on this horror movie, so it may not be the dish of a recommendation that I hope it is. But I recently saw a movie called The Sadness.
I have not
seen. Oh my God,
Korean,
this movie,
right? Korean horror film?
No, the filmmaker is Canadian, but it was shot in Korea.
Got it. Okay.
And so it stars a lot of Korean people, obviously, because of the setting. And the filmmaker who was like from Mississauga or somewhere close to that in Ontario. Rob Jabaz, I think is his name. Amazing job with the movie. The movie is the first horror movie since I can't even tell you when that has given me nightmares. There's just an unbelievable amount of depravity in the movie, and I wasn't prepared for it. And I strongly recommend it if you need a fix as a horror fan.
Diving in tonight.
It's on Amazon Prime in Canada, so I'm hoping the same can be for you guys somewhere.
I'll find it. I'll hunt it down.
My non-horror recommendation I'm a little bit struggling with, but I guess I'll just throw out something I recently saw too, which I had a lot of fun with, which was Daniel Radcliffe's Weird Al movie. I thought it was really funny, and I'm a longtime Weird Al fan. I was the weird kid on the playground at school because I was
picking that up,
reading Pet Sematary, and I remember this just actually now my memory just struck me was I was walking around the playground one day and I had headphones on and some girl came up to me and she's like, "What are you listening to?" And it was literally My Bologna. So I wasn't even like afraid of showing her. I was so innocent. I just like took my headphones. I'm like, "Here you go," and I saw her face just go. Like, she was into like Green Day and like Our Lady Peace and normal things, I assume. And her face just crunkled, and then she's like, "Okay, you can have it back." And I was like, she goes, "You're weird."
Wow.
So that was my childhood. Good. I love Weird Al, and so that movie was a lot of fun for me as a fan. And the meta nature of that movie is just so great that he turned his biopic into a satire of biopics. What a perfect culmination of his career. So I recommend that movie too.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
God, I love those recess stories are so good. David, what about you?
Mine is so for horror, it's a tie. It's Stay Mod.
Ooh,
Yeah.
And Beau is Afraid.
all right.
I would call that a
yeah.
horror film. A lot of people also had mixed feelings about Beau is Afraid. That's part of why I love it so much. I feel like both those movies are just so good at describing the subjective, like a subjective camera and a subjective storytelling through, like, as perceived through the character. And both those movies, I'm in love with both those movies.
We love Saint Maud, and we talked
Uh-huh.
a lot about Beau is Afraid, and there are a lot of things in Beau is Afraid that we love, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
Really have been wanting to Sean and I saw it early at a
Yeah.
screener. We don't need to dive into it, but we saw it in a strange screening room, and I don't know if that contributed to it, but have been wanting to rewatch it recently. I have a Hereditary tattoo. I love Ari Aster's work, but
Nice.
yeah, unfortunately didn't love it as much as I love Saint Maud. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I see you
Yeah.
have the the Midsommar collector item there on your shelf.
oh,
That's
absolutely.
pretty cool. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I mean,
The yellow spike
it's
thing,
all
yeah.
it's all there.
Yeah.
Do I have a Saint? I have a Saint Maud too. I don't have a Beau is Afraid yet, but maybe after the second watch, it'll get.
Right.
It is a horror. Like, I totally think Beau is Afraid is a horror. I think I think Beau is Afraid makes any screening room weird. So I don't think it was your screening
Totally.
room that did it. And I also love the movie Pie, and I love it for how much I hate a portion of the film. Right. There's this portion at the end where, like, the telephone is ringing for like 20 minutes straight as he's, like, losing his mind, and Darren Aronofsky thought it'd be a great idea if the audience got to lose their mind with him, which is, like, just such a painful, torturous experience. And I feel like Ari Aster was like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that for 3 fucking hours.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. People were coming out of the theater. I saw it in Hollywood, and they were like, what was it with that fucking penis monster? Like, I just started to be like, I'm so lost. And I was like, this is what a movie should do,
Yeah.
I like its divisiveness. But
Yeah.
for the nonfiction movie, there's an amazing Japanese movie that I saw maybe last year called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. Have you guys heard of it?
No. I love a
No,
long
okay.
title like that. It
Yeah.
sounds like a metalcore
It's
song.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's a comedy. It's a Japanese comedy movie that is a single shot film. And it's basically about a man who lives above his cafe in Japan, and he gets messages from 2 minutes in the future from himself.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just imagine, and so what real information is 2 minutes going to give you? And it's just really funny how he, like, comes to grips with, like, why is this happening? Why? And basically the guy that's telling him, I'm from 2 minutes in the future from downstairs in the cafe and leaving this message. And he's like, okay. So he's like, okay, so now you need to go down here and leave the message for you upstairs. And he's like, okay. So he just automatically goes and does it. And it's just a series of events that start happening because of this thing. I love the movie, and I recommend it to, like, anyone and everyone. Beyond the Infinite 2 minutes.
I'm sold.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
completely
it's
sold.
Killer. So I definitely want to check it out.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
Sci-fi, comedy sci-fi.
Hell yeah. And it's a tight 70. Love to see that. Well, these recommendations are amazing. Again, we can't say enough. We loved this conversation with you guys. You guys mentioned people not listening to this interview until they've experienced the movie. We'll preface this whole conversation by telling people to watch Antrum without looking up anything about it.
We always do that.
Because obviously, we agree that's the way to watch it. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Oh, man.
Anything that you guys want to, talk? I know that, SAG-AFTRA and WGA are striking, but anything that you guys have going on right now that's you guys want to talk about before you leave, feel free.
I don't know if we can speak too much about that at this moment, but when we do, we'll definitely contact you guys. But I have to say, like, we are just, thrilled that, like, 4 years after Antrum came out, that you guys are inviting us on. Like, it's such an incredible honor. And, like, Thank you so much for supporting this film, and it's nice to see that this like indie labor of love that was made by like three schmucks in the woods and like $19,000, has this like kind of lifeblood. So, thank you so much. It's really been an honor being here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
thank
absolutely,
you.
guys.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Again, anyone listening to this, please check out Antrum if you went through that whole interview and heard Sean and I's intro and still decided to not watch it before listening to this. Go check it out wherever you can find it. But David, Michael, thank you guys again so much. Thank you guys again for listening to our interview with David Amito and Michael Laicini, the directors and writers of Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. And thank you again to David and Michael for hopping on with us and giving us some extra time as we broke down a lot of different things in that conversation, which was great. Before we let you guys all go today, as if you don't have a choice, you're all completely able to just press skip on the end of this. But before we let you go, before you stop listening to this episode, it's time for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. I think I went first last time.
Sure.
So it's Sean's turn to go first.
All right. So I have to give just a little bit. The reason that I'm recommending this is because of a weird thing that just happened to me last night. My memory is not great. I've consumed a lot of media. And books have like a weird relationship with my mind. This is going to sound super whatever, but my grasp on reality is not that strong. And I was watching a movie or last night I was watching this movie, and there was a part of the movie. Actually, it wasn't a movie. It was a show. I was watching a part of a show.
Yeah, your memory is bad.
Yeah, my memery's so bad. But either way, there's a part of it.
I was watching a movie. Wait, it was a fish. Never mind.
Dude, I was watching this fish. I was watching the show, and there was just a character that kind of forms this friendship with an older man that lives on his block, and all of a sudden I got these like flash images of the story in my head, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I didn't know if it was a movie that I read or like a dream that I fucking had.
A movie you read.
A movie I read, dude. Well, you don't do subtitles? No. It was, yeah, I have bad brain. We all know this, but it was so weird to get bombarded with these images and this story in my head, and I spent the next half hour trying to figure it out. I eventually figured out that it was a book that I read years ago, but I don't know exactly how many. I'm pretty sure that it was in the apartment with Bruce, so like 6 years ago. But I couldn't remember who recommended it to me, but it is a book called Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock. And it is a super bizarre book. I don't even know that I'm going to tell you that I loved it, but I certainly enjoyed reading it, if that makes sense. It's just a trip. I don't want to tell you guys too much other than it is about a teen boy who is struggling with some pretty intense mental health issues and identity stuff, has a terrible relationship with his mother, a fun relationship with a much like a senior neighbor of his, and a really dangerous relationship with an old friend. And that's where I'm going to leave it. If any of you have read this already, please write and tell us what you think about it, because I think that there are some controversial opinions on it as well. And then if you're looking for a book recommendation, there you go. And write us whenever you finish it. So yeah, it's just been a journey, like suddenly remembering this book. So that's why I'm recommending it.
What were you watching that prompted that?
It was it was Modern Family, and I know. I was watching Modern Family, but the character that I was thinking of he's just like in this episode, so that's why I didn't immediately place it.
Got it.
But yeah, it's just like their son forms this relationship with this older man that everyone thinks is like the mean old man.
Got it.
And yeah.
Interesting. I just looked up the premise and it sounds interesting. It also looks like Channing Tatum wanted to make it into a movie, and then all the Harvey Weinstein stuff happened. They were like, never mind.
Wait,
So,
what? Channing Tatum was going to make this into a movie?
It looked like he was going to adapt
Interesting.
it, and then it must have been a Harvey Weinstein, whatever thing, and yeah.
It's a trip. I think I might even reread it sooner than later, and by that I mean like maybe within the next year.
It reminds the cadence of the title reminds me when Will Ferrell says, "I'll kill you, Leonard," or is it him or John C. Reilly who says, "I'll kill you, Leonard Nimoy" in Step Brothers when they're like sleepwalking?
Well, the sleepwalker I think is they both sleepwalk.
Both of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Chelsea, can you
drop?
Can you surprise us with who says "I'll kill you, Leonard Nimoy" in that sleepwalking bit in Step Brothers?
I'll kill you, Leonard Nimoy.
I think it's John C. Reilly, but I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I have 2 recs this week. The first thing that I want to do, my new setup puts me in front of all of my physical media, which I'm a big fan of, and I'm going to do a blind rec. So I'm gonna reach my hand back and grab a movie,
rolling the dice today,
and recommend what it is. Ready? All right. Ooh, an interesting recommendation.
Okay.
Frankenweenie.
Oh.
So
Okay.
Tim Burton took one of his first projects, and in 2013, possibly, is when this came out.
10
years ago.
I feel like that movie's new, and it's not new.
No, this is one of the last things that Tim Burton did that's not bad. But he made a black and white animated film with Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short, Martin Landau, Winona Ryder,
Martin Scorsese,
obviously
Martin Lawrence,
music by Danny Elfman. But it's
George R. Martin.
It's a fun, it's a fun little sub 90-minute animated film.
Yeah.
From Disney.
I'm gonna go ahead and say also to anyone that has not seen his original short film that he made.
Yeah.
That he either made while he was at Disney or like I think it was his college project that got him. Yeah, his CalArts project that helped him get into like his Disney situation. But he did a live action Frankenweenie that this is based off of.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of
It was
fun.
like his passion project he always wanted to make, and like finally was like, fuck it.
Yeah. It's solid. It's like 13 minutes tops.
Oh yeah, the short. Yeah.
Yeah. But hell yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one to land on. The other thing that I want to recommend, I'm looking at it right now, sitting in my little book stack in my closet, is Emily Carroll's Through the Woods, which is a graphic novel.
You haven't talked about that on here?
Anthology. I feel
probably not
like
as officially as a rec. Probably not as a rec.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think I've had it as a rec.
Yeah.
All of these things online are calling Emily Carroll a comics author. I would call her a graphic novelist. Through the Woods is a graphic novel that is made up of 5 separate horror stories. These feel like modern grim tales. They are all so good to where it takes a lot for me to like read something to completion. Whether it's my mind thinking about too many things or just me not feeling that like I don't have enough time. And so there's not a lot that I've like read all the way through in the past like 5 years. And while this is a graphic novel, once I started with the first story of Through the Woods, I could not put it down. And it got me thinking about adapting it, like how I was seeing it visually.
Sure.
Whereas
it inspired you.
Yeah, it inspired me so much. So I recommend it so much. I probably will read through it again soon because it just even seeing it on my shelf made me want to go through.
Yeah, you've been singing that song since you first picked it up.
So
I still
Shout
have
out
not
to
got
Kaylee.
around to reading it.
Kaylee, you've never read it?
Have we? No, you were telling me that you wanted me to, and I had seen it before because the art caught my attention. I just haven't had a chance, but maybe I'll do that soon, and maybe we can get Kaylee to come have a conversation.
We should.
So
I've tried to get. Shout out to Emily Carroll, the author and I think artist, but tried to get her on the show and weren't able to. So maybe we can try.
That's
to do
100% who I meant. I heard you say Kaylee and wasn't thinking about it, but
Kaylee, our friend, recommended it to me. We can also bring Kaylee on.
Right. Yeah, we'll bring Kaylee on for the intros, outros for when we have Emily on because we're gonna try again and we're gonna get Emily.
Exactly. All
right.
But yeah, that's my rec along with Frankenweenie for this week. listen, listeners, have you read Through the Woods? Have you seen Frankenweenie? Have you read what's it?
Forgive
Matthew?
me, Leonard Peacock.
Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. Mostly Horror Movie Night at gmail.com. You can also tell us what you think about Antrum. I think that would be cool. You can do that on Mostly Horror Pod, which is our Instagram, or our Twitter or TikTok, which are at Mostly Horror. Just talk to us. Just let us know what you're thinking. That'd be great. I don't know what you're singing.
It's Ghost. Those were all demon high demon names.
Cool.
Learn your demonology, dude.
I was talking, so I wasn't listening to what you were saying. I'm on all the socials at Steven is Average, and Sean is everywhere at Hypocrite Inc. or Hypocrite.Inc. And that is all we got for you this week. We will catch you next time.
Goodbye.